Hey everyone, welcome to the Career Journey podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Avila, and today's guest is comedian Jan McInnis. And on this episode, Jan talks about starting a career in marketing early on, kind of falling into this career, but realizing that she had this passion for comedy, and she discusses overcoming her fear and jumping into comedy and even being on the Jay Leno show or auditioning for the Jay Leno show. She talks about kind of pioneering her own way in comedy into corporate comedy. And we get into a really fun conversation about deciding what level you want to reach in your career. So, not just what levels are available to you, but which level do you actually want? Do you want to reach that top level or do you want to stay somewhere else? And you can find her in multiple places. You can find her at theworklady.com, at comedymc.com, and at joke-writer.com. And we'll put all that in our social media if you're interested. So without further ado, please enjoy Jan McInnis. Hey everyone, welcome to the Career Journey podcast, where we explore exciting careers and how to get them from the people who've lived it. I'm your host, Brittany Avila. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy.
I'm good. How about yourself?
Good. So we usually just like to start from the very beginning to see kind of how your journey has taken you. So did you have any idea of what you wanted to be when you were a child?
You know, I always wanted to be a comedian, but I was never the class clown. I always, but senior year when you were like, you got those superlatives like best dressed and most athletic, and I'm
Right.
better than you and all that. My friend Judy said, "Well, sometimes you say funny stuff, so I'm going to put you down as funniest." And so I got 2 votes, me and Judy. But when I went to my class reunion, she was the only one who said, "Oh, you're a comedian. That's perfect." Everyone else was like, "Really? You're still living at home with your parents where you're not famous?" Then I went to the same high school that Warren Beatty and Shirley MacLaine and Sandra Bullock went to, and
Oh, wow.
they didn't win their superlatives either. So, but yeah, so I wanted to, and but because I thought it sounded like a fun job, and went
Mhm.
on to, but I went on to college and graduated from Virginia Tech with a BA in communications. And I remember sitting at dinner with my family at the restaurant that night for my graduation dinner and thinking, now is not the time to tell him I want to be a comedian. So I went into into a 9 to 5 marketing job, worked for the government and for some
Oh, wow.
corporate for about 12 years or so. Had a few starts and stops in comedy. Tried open mics, did classes. I tried one open mic in the '80s, and man, it went great. I mean, it really went great. And afterwards, I'm leaving. I was so freaked out by the lights in your face that you can't see the audience or anything.
Yeah.
I'm leaving the club, and this professional comedian came up to me and grabbed my hand and he said, "Please, please do this again. You have to." And I waited 8 years. I missed the whole comedy boom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So a few lot of starts and stops, and finally I took the plunge and got on stage at another open mic. I did the Jay Leno Comedy Challenge. It was a big contest in the '90s that Leno was trying to get an unknown comedian on the show.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so they had these contests all around the country, and I still had my marketing job, but I had taken a comedy class and had wanted to do it, um, and so I didn't know anything about this contest. I didn't know anything about performing, and they said send in a 3-minute tape, and so you had to have it postmarked by the day after Thanksgiving, that Friday evening. And so I thought, well, I don't have any jokes, but I had done that open mic 8 years earlier. I had a couple of those jokes, and then so I thought, well, my family does funny stuff at Thanksgiving. I'll just write down some of that. Yeah, this is the one Thanksgiving my family did not do anything funny. They So I got home that night and thought, well, I don't have any jokes, and so the next morning I woke up and thought, well, I'm not doing this contest because that's I don't have anything. I have just jokes from 8 years ago, and I rolled over and I started to fall asleep, and this weirdest thing happened. I used to travel a lot for trade shows for my company, my marketing company, or the company I worked for, and I had collected, they give away gifts, and one of the big gifts that year had been alarm clocks, and I never used an alarm clock, but I'd stuffed them in this drawer, and all of a sudden, all the alarm clocks went off.
Oh my gosh.
It was wild, and I mean, I'd never used them, and by the time I got them turned off and found out what was I was awake, and I thought, "Well, I'll write some jokes, I guess." So I didn't know any. I borrowed a mini cassette tape recorder from my dad. I didn't even have a video I didn't know you're supposed to do video. And I walked around my condo. I lived in Virginia, right outside DC at the time, in Alexandria, and I walked around my condo telling these jokes I wrote that morning into the tape recorder, and including a couple jokes from my 8 years earlier. And I I'm I remember mailing them in, and the next week I got a call,
Oh,
and
wow.
they were like, I said, "How many people signed up?" Because they were doing the contest in 3 different clubs, Maryland, DC, Virginia. And I got a call to be on stage in the Virginia club. I'm like, "How many people tried to get in this stupid contest if you're calling me?" And the woman's like, "We had over 100 people, and we're picking like 15.
Oh,
And we
wow.
loved your jokes." I'm like, "Really?" And so I know. So I was like, "Okay." So they booked me in the Virginia contest, and Monday was the first night of the Maryland contest. So it was on the local news, and so I watched the news, and I'm watching it, and they go, "Yeah, professional comedians are all trying to get on the Tonight Show." I remember going, "Professional? Holy crap, I'm not a professional." I was terrified. I practiced. I mean, I was up all night worried for the next night for my show. I practiced with a light shining in my eye because I remembered from 8 years earlier how scary it was that I couldn't see anyone. And I was terrified. I got to the show, and there was like, 12 of us or whatever, and, um, I I ended up, I didn't know any. I mean, everyone there was a professional but me. We get in there in the little huddle with the comedians, they decide they pick, numbers. I didn't know how they picked to go on stage. They go, "We're gonna pick to go on stage," and I said, "I wanna go 4th." And everyone looked at me like I'm an idiot because they draw. And I
Right.
felt stupid, and they're like, "No, we draw," and I ended up getting, like, 4th. And I went on, and I didn't win, but I got written up in the newspaper the next day with one of my jokes, and
Nice.
I remember a woman after the show came over and said, "You gotta do this. This is really good." And I got written up in the newspaper, and it still took me another year before I got back on stage, but, um, nobody saw the newspaper article because my mom bought all the copies, I think. But yeah, so that's kinda the long and short of it. It took I was a lot of starts and stops, and really it took a long time to finally get on stage, and then when I finally did, a year later, I just thought, "I'm going on one more open mic. This is it. I'm not doing this anymore." I'm a marketing person, and I got on, and, I remember it was just killing. I was doing really great, and I had to do 5 minutes, and about 3-minute mark, I couldn't remember the rest of my act, and I remember this little voice in my head saying, "Get off stage, you're laughing, just stop. You don't have to do 5." And I did, and I sat down, and I'm just thinking there, "God, I wanna do this again. No, I'm not, that was it. I'm not doing this anymore." And I got a tap on the shoulder, and it was the MC, and he said, "Hey, call Pat tomorrow." I said, "Who's Pat?" He said, "Pat is the, booker. She caught your act. She wants to give you some MC work." And
Nice.
that was it. I mean, that was the epiphany. I remember walking out that night thinking I'm gonna be a comedian. That's it. And, I took 2.5 years before I quit my day job, but I did, and went into comedy, and now keynote speaking.
Nice. And then I wanna come back to all of that because that's obviously your
Yeah.
career now, but how did you decide to do, like, communications in college? Was that partly because you thought it might help with comedy, or were you
I
more
didn't
into the marketing?
I just did not know what I wanted to do. I just had no idea, and I liked talking, and, I was a DJ at the local radio station or at the college, WUVT, WUVIT, Virginia Tech. I was a DJ there once a week, and I liked it. I thought, "Well, I don't know what I wanna do when I get out, so this is kind of a broad, general, wishy-washy." And actually,
Applicable to a lot.
I took a lot of classes thinking I was gonna be behind the camera, and I took a lot of, camera
Mhm.
classes there, and, um, I ended up being in front of the camera.
Do you think that experience of learning everything behind the camera helps you in front of the camera?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think everything, Steve Jobs has a great quote. He says, "Life does not make sense until you look at it backwards." And that is so
Right.
true. You look back and go, that everything falls in place and comes together. So, yeah.
Nice. And then how did you choose marketing and going in? Because you said you were in that field for about 8 years?
12 years. Yeah.
12 years, yeah.
It chose me again. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I, um, I was a tour guide in DC for summers between college. So when I graduated, I had about 4 different jobs, working as tour guides and doing all sorts of different stuff like that, but I really didn't have a career. And a friend of mine, I was also a tour guide. She was a year or 2 younger than me. We were partying one night, and I ended up staying at her house, crashing on the couch. And her mom came downstairs, that morning, and it was Monday, and she's like, "What the hell are you sleeping on the couch?" And I said, "Well," she goes, "Don't you have to go to work?" I said, "I don't have a job." And she worked for the government. She worked for the National Ocean Service. And within a week, I had a job.
Oh, wow.
She got me a job in her marketing department at the National Ocean Service, and Ruth Barrett just gave me a huge leg up, and I was there for a year, and then I moved on to working in National Academy of Sciences in the original Planet Earth television series. She got
Nice.
me a connection over there, and it was me and another woman coordinated the whole series at the Academy of Sciences. And then after that, I was unemployed for a little bit, and I read a newspaper article ad about a marketing job, and I applied, and I got this marketing director job. So it's all just my dad looks at me when I got the job. He's like, "I've never seen someone land on their feet like you do." And just all these serious things. All of a sudden, I was doing marketing for an association, and then I got another marketing and association job, and then I became a comedian. So,
And you said you had a lot of starts and stops with your kind of comedian work.
yeah.
Do you think that was just because of your other jobs or because you were nervous? Like, why do
Nervous.
you
It
think
was
you
really when I went on stage and did the lights were in my eyes, and I just
Right.
freaked out. And so and then I took a class that was and I think no, I took that class before I went on stage that first time, but it was in a little classroom, and it was a guy, like an evening class for,
Mhm.
one night a week for a couple weeks, and he was a comedian, and he taught this class, and at the end of it, we had to have a 5-minute, uh, comedy show written, and so I did he had judges. It was a contest, and he had judges. His wife and his girlfriend were the judges, and I did my bit, and they loved it. The class loved it, and afterwards, the wife and girlfriend came over and said, "You gotta do this." So then I went on stage at the open mic, freaked out by the lights, freaked out, and I never thought of myself as a comedian. I didn't have um, family in it. I didn't have people that did it. I was not an entertainment family, so you don't know. There's not really a set path. If you want to be a marketing person or a lawyer or a doctor or something, there's a way to do that. But
Right.
nobody lays it out for you in comedy, and it's kind of hit or miss. So, I freaked out on the lights, stayed away for it from 8 years. But that helped me. The marketing job really helped me, because when I did eventually launch my comedy career, my marketing was better than my act.
Which
And
is imperative nowadays.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, and there was no internet, so it was. I I got gigs, and I got better, because you got to get good or get out. And
Yeah.
so I got better, but I had some good marketing skills, and I had business skills, which a lot of comedians. I had so many club owners say nice things like, Mark Ridley up at the Comedy Castle in Detroit said, "I like working with you, Jan, because you are professional. You don't come in and drink up the whole bar. And if you say you'll do 5 minutes, for a guest set, you'll do a 5-minute guest set. You don't show up out of the blue asking for a guest set. If you're doing 30 minutes or 45 minutes on stage, that's what you do. You do your time." And he was really, he said, it's all the professional things that you don't get if you aren't in a business environment that you might mess up on. I think a lot
Right.
of very talented comedians mess up on the easy stuff.
Yeah. And it's probably something that benefited you from not being in that world or having family ties to it, that you didn't know that that was maybe more common.
Right, right. I mean, if you don't, yeah, I didn't. You make a lot of mistakes, and you kind of, my friend Rob and I used to say it was kind of good to be naive, because you do stuff that you don't know you're not supposed to do,
Right.
and sometimes you kind of stumble into it and go, "Whoa, I shouldn't have called that guy, but I did, and now I got this work, and and
Yeah,
so
you don't have that fear.
yeah, you don't have that fear or that predetermined, wow, that won't work, or that's not how you do it. I see so many people who are in LA, you come out and you've got the set way to do things. When I moved out here, I was told, okay, you got to buy this mailing list of 300 agents for $100 or and you got to mail out a postcard to them and get them to come to a show of yours. And this is this formula. And I tried it once and it was awful. It was, I mailed out set up myself on a showcase. I got some postcards. I bought the list. I mailed it. I got one response from a guy who I kind of already knew, and he said no, he wasn't coming out. And I thought this is a horrible way to do this. So maybe it works for other people, but you tend not to think outside the box if you think you know it. So being naive is good.
Right. And so what happened after that? I kind of hesitate to call it, but that big break where all of a sudden you were kind of thrust in and you decided you actually wanted to go into comedy. What?
Yeah. So my best friend Rob was also an open micer. A bunch of it, we kind of met a lot of us open micers. And once I walked out thinking that's it, I started talking to other people about work, and I started working some of the local gigs. In the DC area, there was 4 or 5 clubs that you could work, get MC work and get spots on. And then there was things called one-nighters, which are like bar gigs, and you could go up and down the East Coast working on those. And my friend Rob got booked in a club in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I remember thinking, God, it didn't occur to me to go to somewhere outside DC area. So I sent my tape too and was like, oh, okay. And started getting work on the East Coast, quite a bit of MC work, kind of moving a little bit into feature. I don't know if you know comedy clubs, it's MC, feature, headliner is the 3 level.
Okay.
Or opener, middle, and closer are the 3 levels. And so I was doing, MC work. I pretty much was doing got into it pretty quick. Got hired off the first open mic. I did the one open mic that I got hired, that they hired me to MC in 8 weeks. She said, you're going to open for Kevin Nealon from Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, as an MC here at this, and it was the A Room, the comedy cafe in DC. It was an A Room. So I got work right away from that. And he ended up not doing it. I ended up working with the amazing Jonathan, who's a very funny magic comedian magician. He does magic, but it's kind of BS. It's
more
funny.
comedy.
Yeah, and all his tricks don't work, and it's really funny. So I'd been doing comedy, I guess, about 8 weeks. All right, my first big gig. It's the weekend, A Room weekend, Friday, Saturday. I'm opening for the amazing Jonathan, and I got my family and friends. This place seats a couple hundred people. I'd never been in front of more than 20, and I'm the MC, so I'm supposed to do like 5 minutes, which is fine. I had about 7 minutes of material, but probably not all of it was good, but that's okay. I'm about to go on stage, and Pat, the club owner, pulls me over and goes, our feature act didn't come in, so you're going to have to stretch.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh my God, I mean, like, we're talking stretch 20 to 25 minutes, And I went up there, and thank God it was a hot crowd, because my knees were shaking. I was that scared. And I was just doing audience work and throwing in my jokes and this and that. And after about 20 minutes, the little light that shines on you, tell you can get off stage, the light popped on. And I went, oh, thank God she found a feature act, a local guy. And I remember thinking partway through, I can put this microphone down. I'm not a comedian. I have a marketing job. I don't have to do this. But I stayed with it. I saw the light come on. And I think I gave the guy, Greg Poole, the worst introduction ever. And I got off stage, and all I remember is him getting on stage and going, well, that was kind of a bad introduction. I was so happy to get off stage. I was so like, oh my God, I'm so relieved. And so Greg did a great job. He was a local guy from Maryland. He literally got down there in 15 minutes to do the gig. And he did it. And then Jonathan went on. He was great, but he has these magic tricks, and they're just funny, and they don't work and all this. He gets down to his last trick, and he goes, hey, can we have the MC come up here and do a few minutes? I left my last trick in the car. And I'm standing there staring at these hundreds of people
Oh,
thinking,
no.
I got nothing else. I did everything I had. I got nothing. And just then Greg taps me on the shoulder and goes, "You want me to do it?" And I said, "Yes." He ran up there and saved me, because if I'd had to go back up, I probably would never be doing comedy again. I
Oh,
would have been
wow.
freaked out. So it went great. The rest of the weekend went great. Got work. It was a fun launch. Interesting launch.
Um, and I mean, you were nervous obviously during that. That didn't set you back into your kind of stops from before? You still felt confident to move forward?
Oh yeah, it was after that I just started getting a lot of work and realizing, it's part of the gig. You're going to get nervous. You're going to get weird crowds, crazy crowds. Worked in my day job for about 2.5 years, and launched into full-time stand-up.
Nice.
And
And how
because I had my day job, I would run conferences and stuff like that, and part of
Mhm,
it. And I remember at one event, I had been working, comedy clubs for a couple years, and at one event we hired the Capitol Steps, which is a singing troupe in DC. I think they're all around the country now. They have a touring troupe. They're staffers on Capitol Hill, and they do song parodies, and they're really funny. They're
mhm.
very well known. We hired them. This is 25 years ago, and I remember giving them a huge check. For me, it was huge. It was, $10,000, I think, something like that, 25 years ago. And I'm thinking, wow, they're making a lot of money at this corporate work. And I'm thinking, well, is there other corporate work out there? And my comedian friends were like, no, there's just Christmas parties, And I was like, no, I really think there's other events. And so that's what I got in the comedy clubs, went full time in that, but kind of kept my eye on corporate events and thinking that's kind of where I want to go. So that helped me get in the marketing job.
Yeah, and then did you end up finding corporate jobs, or did you
Yeah, yeah. I worked on the road doing comedy clubs, but always stayed clean act and everything, and kind of thought, I think there's money in this corporate stuff. And by a fluke, a couple of flukish things happened while I was
Mhm.
working, and I ended up with corporate. One of them was I called a comedy club in Iowa. I was in New Jersey working, and I wanted this gig in Iowa. I called the club, and I got the guy on the phone, Keith West, and he said, "Well, I split with my partner in the club. He took the comedy club. He goes, I do corporate shows. Are you clean?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I don't have any women or many women doing clean comedy for these corporate shows. Send me a
Nice.
videotape." And I did. And then he liked it. So for 3 Decembers, he would every December for 3 years he would bring me out, and it'd be 2 weeks of just doing Christmas parties. And I said, I don't care how much money I make for these. I would do them one or two or three a night for like 5 or 6 nights or whatever. And I said, I don't care how much money I make. What I want is a letter saying that they enjoyed it, because I need it for
Oh,
my marketing so I can get more corporate. So he
right.
really helped launch me. He and my friend Frank King, who also got me in touch with some uh, speakers bureaus and bookers, really helped launch me into corporate.
That's nice. And then I know you mentioned earlier too about the audience. You've mentioned a few times about having kind of a hot audience or a good audience. How important is the audience into your acts?
Well, I don't do a lot of audience work, but yeah, you want to make sure you connect with the audience and get a group that you'll connect with. Audiences are different. People laugh differently. I've been in front of accountants who aren't as vocal, but they're still having a great time. I've been in front of salespeople who are always laughing and having fun, and they're usually pretty vocal. So you want that. I mean, obviously, you want people laughing, but you got to kind of know that, okay, if they're what their industry is, they may be a little more reserved. Accountants,
Right.
a little quieter than healthcare people. Healthcare people are great. They're usually lots of laugh. Yeah. So
And so do you tailor your acts specifically for each type of
you know,
corporation or each type of audience?
yeah, I have a conference call ahead of people. Now I do more keynotes than comedy shows, so I have a
Okay.
message and that. But I do have a conference call with the client ahead of time, and then I include some stuff on them. The basic bones of the act are the same. You'll find that across pretty much everyone. There's not a lot of people who have
Yeah.
5 hours of material, you know?
Right.
Unless you get famous, and then you gotta come up with 5 hours of material, but if you're not famous like me, you don't have to worry so much about that. But you can, but then I tailor the jokes and write, kick off with a few minutes on them that they know that I know what they're going through and what they're dealing with, and it's always fun.
Right.
It's interesting to me to find out about these different industries. Most people spend their whole career in one, maybe two industries, and I'm in, 25 or 30 industries. So it's fun.
Right. And then what are the major differences maybe between kind of the stand-up work you were doing prior to now, the corporate, and then even the keynote
Yeah.
addresses that you do now? What are the
What
differences between those?
well, what I started doing with the keynotes was because back in 2008, with the recession and everything, people still
Mhm.
wanted to hire comedians, but they needed a message to justify it. So I came up with a keynote that's been really popular called "Finding the Funny in Change," where tell them how to use humor to handle change. Um, and so what I do, I kick off with some humor, and then I talk in the keynote about how to use humor in business, and I kind of refer back to the jokes in the beginning and say, "Hey, what did I do here? What did I do here?" And it's very effective and a lot of fun. I think one of the main differences is I never go on at 10 o'clock at night anymore. After
Right.
they've been drinking, I'd say rarely, not ever, but uh, I'm usually doing something kick off the conference, maybe in the middle of the conference or at the end, but it's usually a daytime thing, which is
Right.
I love it. I've done my share of late nights and weekends, and there's not a lot of that with this. So, and I get the MC stuff too. I'm master of ceremonies at a lot of um, events, and that's fun too. I get my fill of jumping up and having some fun with comedy, and in between all the sometimes dry speakers.
And do you want to walk us through your process of how you come up with your sets or your jokes? Like the writing
Well,
process? Do you have to sit down and write them first, or do you just kind of walk around and
well, it's I think when you first start out, you kind of just look around and go, "Oh, that sign is funny. I'll write that." Or that. But now it's more of I don't know. I try to spend a little time each day or at least each week. I make notes on my phone of things that kind of what's going on and what do I feel about it. Really, comedy is from your perspective, and um, getting that aha moment where people get what you're saying. Pulling
right?
out the ironies and the disconnects and the things that aren't making sense in the world. So for my process is sort of I try to set aside some time, but also just kind of always be looking for the humor, and you know, and and you really come up with talking about humor from your own experiences as opposed to just I get like I said when you first start out, your your act may be very disconnected because you're talking about that's funny sign and this fun. Now my act is about really has my fingerprint on it, my stamp.
Mhm.
I'm talking about things that are personal, things I've experienced, my perspective, my take on stuff. So it's evolved a little bit. I used to write a lot of topical. I sell a ton of material too. I used to anyway. I don't do it as much because I'm too busy. But I've sold to everyone from the Tonight Show to greeting cards, radio, syndicated cartoon strips, guests on the Jerry Springer Show. So a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
material to people, and so that's where I kind of and so I write a lot. Used to write a ton of topical jokes, on the news stories, and I started out my act trying to make it news stories and topical, but that's so hard to keep up with. That you just can't. But you can always have, there's always going to be some stupid drunk celebrity. So you can just change the
Right.
name, you can just change the name or the incident, and you can reuse that joke in another year.
And how do you sell that kind of stuff? Like, how do you find people? Do people find you? How do you
People find me
find
now.
the
People
people?
are finding me. I've got a website, comedy. Well, that's Comedy MC. That's the other one. Jokewriter.com,
Oh,
joke-writer.com, and people are finding me. I got connected with a group. I wrote a lot of radio stuff for radio for years. About 10 years, I wrote um, 15 jokes a day for hundreds of radio stations, and it was a sort of a prep service.
mhm.
DJs come in the morning. They don't have they're in at 4 in the morning. They don't have the news stories all lined up. So They
Right.
subscribe to different prep services to give them news stories and stuff like that. And I would write some
Okay.
humor for those.
Wow. So comedy sounds like it has a lot of variety. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach
Yeah,
it.
that you can approach it, that you can make a living at it. People always, God, when I started out, everyone kept saying, "Oh, you're gonna get a sitcom," and I never wanted to get a sitcom. I
Right.
didn't really even wanna be on staff as a writer. I mean, they make good money, but I just always like the freedom of freelance.
Right.
And there's, people now they're learning about this corporate market, but for years, people could not even get their head around what I was doing, and it was like, "Well,
Mhm.
that's fine because I'll just make all the money." And the corporate work is way better, paid way better. You're not, comedy club was running Tuesday through Sunday, and, you know, you're driving usually 50,000 miles a year now. You fly out, do the event, fly back, so it's a lot less travel, a lot less wear and tear, a lot more money, better accommodations, all that sort of stuff. So it's just, but people didn't know what that was. So, if you're looking for whatever career you're looking for, don't think outside, don't think inside the box. I mean, I hate that word,
Mhm.
think outside the box,
I know.
but don't just narrow it down to what everyone says you should do. Keep your eyes open to the other things, because there's so many things I didn't know I could write for, and I didn't know I could, you know, do these comedy for, or emceeing for. But if you just think comedy clubs and that's it, you're not. And make sure you network with people. Ask tons of questions. I would ask every comedian I worked with. I would ask tons of, what are you doing, and how do you do it, and how long you been doing this, um, and people will help you out. I mean, they'll tell you what they've done or whatever, and um, yeah. So I asked a lot of questions when I started out. I still do.
Yeah, I think that was something that was surprising to me is how many people are willing to help you on your journey. I think I was always nervous. I was more of an introvert. I was super scared to ask people how to get places and what to do and network. And it's amazing. Almost everybody you reach out to is pretty warm and friendly about it.
Yeah,
There
most
are a
people
few,
are.
but
Yeah, there's other people that are always, I mean, like, I've had people point blank, "Well, what is the service you write for?" Well, no, I'm not gonna give you that because I don't know you, and I'm not gonna, I had one guy
right.
years ago who guessed the service and then went over to them and used my name, and I had to
Oh
call
wow.
the service and say, "No, I don't hardly know this guy, and he shouldn't have used my name." And he guessed what it was. I never said what it was, um, and you know, you have people that try to go around you, and people that point blank, "Will you do this?" And no, but if you want just information, then go do it. Then get the information, and then go figure it out yourself. And you
Right.
know, but if you become friends with people, a lot of times they will even open up more,
More.
but not if you push yourself on them, you know?
Yeah. And do you have any advice for young people now that maybe are trying to get into comedy?
Um, a couple things. Yeah, I would say, first of all, network, network, network. Just get out there and meet people. And it's easier than ever to do now, but also,
Right.
a bit of advice. My friend Rob Duffett, who was a comedian that started with me, he worked with a really great comedian, Jonathan Katz. And this is 20 years
Mhm.
ago. Jonathan had a very popular um, show on. It was a cartoon on television, and he was a therapist, and he would have other comedians come in and lay on his couch and do their act. It was very funny, and the therapy sessions and everything. And Rob asked him, Jonathan, what advice were you given? He gave us the best advice. He said, create your own projects. Don't wait for other people to come at you. Come
Mhm.
up with the ideas. And then the other bit of advice I got from a really great comedian, Lord Corrette. I know I don't have any of my own advice, but these are people that have really helped me out. Lord
Yeah.
Corrette, funny guy. I think he's in New York now. He gave me, he said, when I was emceeing, he said, Jan, first of all, stay as an MC as long as you can. Stay at the bottom. Most people want to push
Oh, yeah.
forward and get ahead fast, but you're not ready, and it will show. He said most comedians don't want to be the MC. They want to be the feature act. Well, you got to have 30 minutes, not 10. If you're the feature,
Right.
and a lot of comedians barely get to the feature act, and then they get stuck as a feature because they can barely do that. They'll never move to headliner. He said, instead, put together two 15-minute sets, really strong to be two 15-minute MC sets, put those together, and then you'll blast through the 30-minute feature slot and you'll be headlining. And I did that. And it was
Right.
great. also, as an MC, you learn more. I mean, you work with bigger names. You know, if you race to be the headliner, all of a sudden you're the person on the show that's got to have the most of the contacts, you know?
Right.
As an MC, I worked with all the big headliners and feature acts that had contacts and could help me. And so it was just a great learning experience. So stay at the bottom as long as you can stand it. You know, he said you're not going to be stuck there. If you're funny, if you're good, people will realize it and they'll recognize it and move you forward. So don't push, of course, but don't. Some people that like, and if you like being at the bottom, fine, but stay there. I mean, stay whatever level, but don't push yourself before you're really ready to get out.
I like that advice because it seems counterintuitive. I think, especially in the US, where we have this idea that we're supposed to push ahead at all costs and get to the top.
Right.
And kind of taking your time and really honing the craft first.
Yeah.
I like that advice.
And don't and figure out what success is to you, seriously, because so many people, when I got to LA, I was thinking, well, maybe I wanted to do sitcoms. Well, I realized pretty quick, I don't know if that's for me, acting and all that. So, my success to me was being able to have sort of a 9-to-5 comedy career where I could have weekends and nights and have a regular life. I made enough money to, afford the lifestyle I want. And I don't care. I didn't care about the fame and the fortune. Maybe I missed a boat on something, but it's been a great ride and still is. So 25 years and, doing great. So I can't complain.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have the longevity in a career where sometimes you get famous and it's a little bit shorter, or there's definitely downsides.
You get famous too fast too. And you don't know how to handle that. And then you're flash in the pan, so.
Right. When you mentioned too about staying the MC, if people wanted to stay there at that level, there's also that too. That could be success for somebody, especially if it's a hobby and not exactly, a side job or something they're just kind of doing on the side instead of the main focus. So there's all kinds of versions of success.
I knew guys that liked the feature slot because it's the easiest slot. It didn't pay great. Most people wanted the headlining money because it paid better. But the feature slot, they liked being in there because they did their 30 minutes. You didn't have to open the show to a cold audience. You weren't responsible for closing it, where everyone you had to be good.
Right.
You just ride. That's the best. That's the funnest slot on the whole show. I guarantee you it's fun. And so there were guys that I like it here. And, good for them. But figure out what it is, what you want out of it. I mean, that'll help you guide toward the path, but keep open to other things that pop up your way that you may not have been on your radar.
Yeah, especially now where I think a lot of new jobs are created. Like there's new content every day, new ways to present. Like who would have thought TikTok would be a big place for like comedy, but it is all of a sudden, right?
I know.
Or any type of creativity.
I was trying to figure TikTok out, and my friend's daughter was like, Jan, stop it. That's for 16-year-olds or whatever.
Not anymore.
No, but I want to try it.
I know. I had all my students told me to join TikTok to kind of promote this podcast. And I got on it, and all of a sudden, like, there's all these older people, like, it's all coming at me, like all these over 30 groups of people, because that's obviously who I identify with. So there's tons of different people on there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's growing, but... Well, great. Do you have any last minute kind of advice that I know we just went over a ton of advice, but
no, just, people talk about dirty comedy versus clean comedy. The only rule with comedy is be funny. You gotta be funny. Be yourself. If you cuss a lot, make sure you're not just cussing to cuss. I mean, or telling, make sure there's a punchline when you write your material, make sure there's a punchline. But then say it the way you would say it. People are paying for your perspective and your take on it. Now, if you're dirty, you're not going to work the same venues I will, but you'll find your niche. I mean, you'll find your following. You'll find the people that like you. You got to be true to yourself and do the stuff that you really enjoy. So, and it's not fun if you're just trying to always mold yourself. I saw a guy. I used to work with him at the Comedy and Magic Club here in LA. Very funny act, very funny. And he tried for years to get on one of the late night shows, and he had a character, and it was so good. And he never did it. He never got on the late night shows. So a couple of years ago, I saw him, and he was trying again to get on late night, but he changed his whole character to just being stand up as opposed to and I don't know if he ever got on the shows, but I just saw it and thought, oh, that's such a shame. It wasn't as funny, and I just loved his character. So
Yeah.
do what you think is funny, and but maybe his entire goal in life was to get on. And I've lost touch with the guy. I haven't talked to him in a while, but maybe his whole, maybe that was his whole focus. So he didn't care that he was changing his character. But boy, I liked his character.
Yeah.
So
Well,
figure out your goal. Start to figure out what it is you want out of this, and maybe and again, keep your eyes peeled for other opportunities and things and don't be afraid to go down a path if someone says, "Hey, have you ever done this?" And if it sounds interesting, try it. Give it a shot. Well, don't just try, do. I mean, you got put the work into it, and if it really sounds like something, and you may, like I was asked to be an imposter years ago, and the people that pretend like they're, the hotel woman from the hotel welcoming the attendees, and then you get funnier and funnier, and you start to bash the boss or stuff like that until everyone realizes you're a comedian. I've done that. Sometimes it's worked, sometimes it hasn't, because I wasn't really into it. I did it only because the client said, we want you to do it. And I was young and I didn't have the guts to say, I don't want to do that. I want people to know I'm a comedian and have license to laugh. So I didn't, I should have turned it down, and now I would turn down imposter because it's not something I want to even put the energy into doing. There are people who are very good. They make a lot of money doing it. I don't really want to do it.
Right. But sometimes it takes doing it to know that you don't want to do it.
Right. And the first time I did it went great. And it went great, then went awful, then great, then awful was the last one. I was like, that's it. I was lucky on those two greats. I'm done with it. I don't want to do it anymore. But can I plug my websites and stuff?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right here, yeah.
Yeah,
my
please do.
main website is theworklady.com. Because nobody can spell McInnis. So I used to do tons of work humor. So I guess I'm the work at home lady now, but theworklady.com. And the comedy MC is for my Master of Ceremonies, and health comedian, because I do a lot of healthcare. And jokewriter.com is my joke writing. So lots of websites.
Awesome. Yeah. So we can check those out, and then we'll put them in all of our social media and stuff too, so people can link directly to it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So take care, and let me know the links. I will tag or whatever, or hashtag or whatever I'm supposed to do.
Whatever it's called nowadays.
Yep.